This episode of the Boss Rush Podcast is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the Boss Rush family of podcasts, head to bossrush.net or our Patreon at patreon.com/bossrushmedia. Thanks for helping us build something better. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Boss Rush Podcast, a great place to play games and be better. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Dirrig, and alongside me, as always, is the mad pharmacist herself, Stephanie Klimov.
Hi, I'm here.
Hello.
Very excited.
Good to see you, Stephanie.
Good to see you.
This is an exciting episode.
A very exciting episode.
I'm very excited. Also joining us is PK Power Pat Klein.
I would show you how excited I am, but this is the prime time, so I can't take off my shirt here.
Oh, no.
That's for after
no
dark.
nipples on YouTube. Yeah. Oh, boy. But, guys, we have a very special guest tonight from Geek Therapeutics. He does some incredible things, and we're gonna learn a little bit about him tonight. Dr. Anthony Bean is joining us tonight. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Oh, I see books. Did I sign them for you at least?
One of them, yes. The other one, just because I bought online. We'll get into that. Trust me, I will geek out it in a little. Geek out about it in a little bit.
She will. It's fun. So, Tony, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, kind of what geek therapy is. We have a lot of questions from our audience, and some from your audience a little bit too. So, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. My audience is not shy. If you haven't figured that one out yet, which is always a blessing in most days, for everything, because they voice their opinion. And we want them to do that. So I'm what you call a licensed clinical psychologist. And so I have gone through lots of education, taken some grueling tests that no one should ever have to take, that have no clinical applicability on any level. And
you took the CPA too?
They just don't. It's called the EPPP. It's just how well can you memorize information that is randomized for you. And I do a lot of different things. So I am I'm the CEO of Geek Therapeutics. I'm also the executive director of a nonprofit down here in Texas called the Telos Project, where we serve underserved individuals. And regardless of socioeconomic status, we basically provide therapeutic and testing services. We specialize in really getting a lot of autism testing done, because there's such a massive need down here for it. And honestly, the people who provide testing down here kind of suck. I'm just gonna say it. Like, we see some of their tests or their reports, and we're like, how like, where did you learn how to test? Like, this is terrible. I also run a publishing company, which we'll get into, kind of because Steph is very excited with her books. And I run a private practice on the side as well, for those who need a little bit more specialized services.
Busy, but in all the best ways.
Yeah,
it's never a dull moment. I can tell you that. There's always something going on.
That's being busy. It's better to be busy, I guess, though, than to not be busy, though, right? I mean, because so Geek Therapeutics, this is kind of, I think, how you came to our attention at PAX, I believe. And so what does that offer, and kind of what is that compared to everything else that you are trying to keep up with at this point?
Oh man, what that PAX was a ride. That was literally like our best show that we've ever been at, and I think the best that we'll ever see this year, in my opinion, pending what's happening at Unplugged in West. What what we do is, first and foremost, we're what we call an educational company. That's what we were founded on. And we provide a lot of different services. So, for instance, one of the big things that we do is continuing education. Now, anyone who is licensed is going to know that we are approved by the four main accrediting bodies for psychology, which are APA, NBCC, Association of Play Therapy, and ASWB, which is for social workers, for all of our educational content. And so what that means is we provide topics of interest to clinicians and other individuals who are interested in incorporating geek culture into their practice. And we provide a ton of support and over 120 hours of educational content that's all approved by them. Plus, we have separate programs such as a therapeutic game master, a certified geek therapist, the ability to really function in a sometimes we all have some problematic gaming behaviors, and we have a problematic gaming specialist program that's been taken off more recently. And also we have been working on our new program for the year. We usually release one or two a year, and it's going to be on mindfulness and geek culture. And so that's going to be one of the big things that'll be kind of coming on out.
Can you
So,
please just start adding pharmacy accreditation so I can take credit?
So we actually looked at the one for medical, because there's one that'll encompass all of pharmacy, psychiatrists, and everyone else, and they want like $15,000 just to look at the application, and that's not even guaranteeing, because that's to start it, and it's like a 2-year process. Yeah, it's crazy.
All right. Well,
It's absolutely crazy
What's to stop
to
them
kind
from
of go
taking
in
15
and do
and
that type
running?
of stuff.
dang.
There's nothing that is able to kind of get us to that right now at this point. So that's first and foremost what we started off as. And so I've been using geek culture since I was, my gosh, in high school, is easily one of the things to kind of like better understand oneself, the games, the world around us, and how do we treat things as games. And that's really kind of what I would say is the idea of what I've done here is really a gamifying my life in some sort of capacity. And so we've been doing this stuff. We've been practicing since 2009 in this type of stuff. That was my undergrad, but we've been doing it again earlier, but I would say officially like 2009. And we all got licensed. Well, I got licensed, and other people who were part of this initiative also got licensed. And we were being asked like 2 to 3 times a week to present to different areas of private practices, organizations, and a whole bunch of other stuff across the world. And it just became too much. As anyone will know, that trying to work a full-time job and then getting asked to do these presentations, like I did one for one over in Australia where I had to be awake at midnight in the middle of the week and do a 3-hour presentation for them, and then go to work 4 hours later. And so it became a pretty big problem, but we always wanted to make sure that we continued on with this project, and because it's very passionate for us. We're very, very passionate about incorporating the idea of geek culture into therapeutic practice, and that's where we incorporated it and just began running all of these different aspects of geek culture into therapy. And we research, we're evidence based. I mean, we have pretty much everything we need that's out there, and we continue to do more and more research. So even over the last 8 months, I've had 3 papers accepted on the topics across different areas.
That's amazing.
So it's happening, and so we're working on our peer-reviewed model stuff right now, along with getting some other things off our plates, because we have a lot. We just finished Elden Ring, Psychology of Elden Ring, And so that's is in audio book format going forward right now. The ebook should be done theoretically by next week, and I should have a sample of the physical copy of the book probably within 2 weeks, and then we go to full print.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's crazy.
And to double geek
So
out. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
nope. Go ahead, Steph.
Nope. I'm
Go
just
ahead, Steph.
saying to double geek out because again, like I'm a gamer and I'm also a pharmacist. The fact that you use the word evidence based, just music to my ears. I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
evidence based. I love that. Anyway, so go ahead,
Mm.
Corey. Sorry.
How do you choose like what game or whether it's a video game or a board game or something to focus on when you're kind of going through what you're getting ready to do next?
That's a good question because that's not an easy one. So when we choose a new topic, we look at what's happening in the world. What are we doing? What are the things that we are experiencing, and what are we specifically playing as well? And I think that's one of the biggest drivers. So we hit all of my favorite genres in games already. We've hit Pokemon, we've hit Legend of Zelda, we've hit Final Fantasy, we just did Elden Ring, which I've platinumed. Um, we're about to hit the end stages of My Hero Academia. We announced The Witcher, uh, Bluey,
Mm,
The Last of Us. We have a Psychology of D&D coming out. We'll have the
nice.
second edition of that book that Steph has right there, Integrating Geek Culture, probably come out probably early 2024. I've got a couple extra I've got about 7 extra chapters that we're going to probably switch some stuff in and out for. So yeah, it's when we think about what we're looking to do, it's really about what is in the culture and what is going to make the most sense to integrate into it. Elden Ring is going to lead into all of From Software stuff. My Hero Academia opens it up to Demon Slayer because we still have one more arc after this, and that'll open us up into kind of going over the entire series in a lot of different ways. We really focus in on the aspect of what is hot in the community but also needed to be explored, because you can go online and you can look at any of these topics on a YouTube video, and you can look at it and be like, cool, you've got some stuff, and you're kind of making some sense, but there's no real hard evidence behind it. It's all hyperbole. And what we do is we come in and we're like, yeah, no, that's really not really what happened. However, evidence and research suggests this type of component around this. And I think that's where our niche kind of comes in. And we're always looking for writers and people to kind of come on in and talk about these things in a thoughtful and also important facet, I think, of life. And we usually get a lot of submissions for stuff, and we can't accept them all. But it's well worth it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of editing. I usually read each chapter about 5 or 6 times before it's
Ooh.
ready for an external editor to look at it.
Has anyone made the suggestion for examining the psychology of Yakuza or Like a Dragon?
We've made some stuff. So the ones that go a little bit more kind of like, I'm going to call it niche, even though it's not fully niche. Not as broad mainstream. We went Elden Ring because it was the first acceptable one for new players to kind of come on in and not feel banished from the world, because it was so intense. And so one of the things that we try to do is we try to make sure it has a wide enough audience that it doesn't flop. And the reason is because, while let's say we did Sekiro or one of the other ninja type ones, I'm going to use Ninja as an example because like Ninja Gaiden even like popped into my mind on that one. If we were to do something on that, some people would buy it. Absolutely. Some people would want to see it, hands down. Would it be something that would hit as many people as we really want it to? Because the purpose of the books are to do deep dives on things that are very broadly used in culture. And that has to ring a bell with someone. So if you go to any school right now, and it doesn't matter what school it is. And you're like, what's the number one thing grade school kids are playing? It's Pokemon. What's the number one thing adults and teenagers are playing right now? It's Tears of the Kingdom. It's one of those things where these books always have not just long legs, but they always have a new way of exploring something that's very common in our world around us in a meaningful and exciting way.
So, I mean, just from the examples that you've given us a little bit, it sounds like you aim more towards like single player focus games. I mean, some of them have like a multiplayer aspect to them, or obviously Tears of the Kingdom has a very community driven thing to it. Have you ever thought about doing something that's really heavily multiplayer focused and trying to figure out that aspect of it? Because I mean, there's a lot of popular multiplayer games out there too, like Fortnite and Destiny and Apex and all these
Minecraft.
All the kids are playing these days. And,
All the kids are playing.
Yeah, because like I mean, so just a side tangent. I had my nephews over to watch some of the Summer Game Fest stuff this weekend and the Xbox showcase, because they're 8 and 10. They're getting to that age where they're like really interested, but don't. I wish I would have had someone at that age to give me a direction to go, because I was an only child. My cousins didn't play games right, and I kind of just had to like. I didn't really have any friends because I played video games and it was so like I didn't really have like a direction to go. So I wish I would have had somebody to say, hey, look at this stuff. This is stuff that you guys both own Xboxes. This is kind of like what the industry is now. And when the Xbox showcase ended, the first thing my nephew said was there wasn't any Fortnite in it, and I was like, well, I've lost him. It's fine.
But shown him the Summer Games Fest, season 4.
I know. But I mean, have you ever thought about exploring the like multiplayer, or maybe you have at some point? Like,
we have thought of it. So one of the big issues that you're going to run into with an FPS, first person shooter, or something like that, is that while the characters have lore, if you look hard enough into it, it's very surface level lore. And that surface level lore doesn't have a lot of, we'll call, legs in order to run or do something off of it. And that's what makes a problem. So what it ends up kind of being and coming down to is really the psychology of competition and being able to work as a teamwork and stuff like that. And sure, you can make that work for 4 chapters max, but what about the other 8 that you're going to really need? Right. And that's really what we're missing in that component. So the thing that we've come closest to is World of Warcraft in some sort of guilds and stuff like that. But even then, that's a dying game, little by little. Every expansion, yes, they have a bump, but they're not even showing their stats of subscribers anymore because they've lost so many. Mm-hmm. And so it's not the game that used to boast 22 million subscribers a month. It's not the same game anymore. And when we look at those ones, it becomes harder. World of Warcraft's a whole another issue. Besides that, it's a slowly dying game. Is they've gone into lore and they've replaced things and they've changed it so much that there's literally no way one book would be able to even encompass all that lore. Even just for Elden Ring, the first chapter is literally lore heavy, and it's intentionally created that way. And I will guarantee, because it happened at our PAX panel, that someone's going to find a problem with it, and they're going to be like, you were wrong with this one little aspect. And you're like, dude, just like let it go. That's an interpretation fact. And the thing that happened at PAX is someone's like, no, that person's hair was red. And I was like, oh my God, guys, we're really debating about hair color in a video game right now. Guys, just let it go. So it really kind of comes down to, does it have enough meat? Does it have enough content in order to kind of go there? Now, can we do a psychology of competition games, or we do a psychology of esports? That's much more, I would say, feasible and doable, because it leads into that fatigue, the idea of mental well-being, of how short-lived these esports players are. I mean, the average esports like lifetime, like you have this many years to play esports, is started to about 12 years, and now we're really about 6 to 7 max is what you've got. And then after that, you're considered old, and you're literally 20. And so it's one of those things where there's a niche out there. There's something for it, but you also have to find the right writers and the right people in order to tease that information out.
If you want to be a Patreon producer, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/BossRushMedia, and find out which tier is right for you. Our Patreon producers at the $5 tier or higher for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dirrig, Francisco Santillan, and Rebecca Jewell. Thank you for your continued support. Yeah, I just I was curious if that was like harder to do from a sense, but like I think it's interesting that you begin with the lore. Is that just to kind of give people who aren't familiar with the game to try to draw them in and have them have a sense of what it is? Because I assume you pick games that are, you know, in the zeitgeist or popular to some extent to try to draw people in, right? To try to see what it's
like. That's part of any sort of sales of any sort of book. Elden Ring is a unique one, and the reason it's again unique is because it was the first game that allowed outsiders to kind of come into From Software, and it was accessible just enough in order to bring people in, and difficult enough to do it. And there was even some hardcore Dark Souls fans and Bloodborne fans who were like still pissed off. They're like, this was too easy. And it's like, guys, like they're trying to bring more people in, and now they're going to release like 2 new games. It's going to be great. And there's going to be more and more people. The main reason I wanted a lore chapter, because we don't always start with that, is because this one, unless you read item descriptions, unless you actually play and listen to the words, not just click your A button as fast as you can, you are going to miss 97% of everything. You're not going to know where the Albernax came from. You're not going to know why the Frost Giants or the Fire Giants kind of came to be and why they went this route. You're not going to know why some of these areas exist, why Randy behaved in this capacity, without some of that background of that lore, and why this world came to be. Why is it just death everywhere? Why is it just so putrid? I mean, all those things go into the lore, and that lore is very important, because if you know it, the game makes 1,000 times more sense. And that's important for this. And so if we're going to talk about a certain topic, such as making sure that you're good and perseverance through and grit through the thing, if we're talking about a specific point in the game and you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, we've just lost you, 1, as a reader, but 2, you're not going to understand the book. And the intention is just where From Software brought people in. We want to bring people in to think about these things in a different way and to understand them in a manner that they can comprehend, and they can leave this book and be like, I've never played that game, but I feel like I've lived part of that in some capacity.
That's cool. I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome that you are doing that. I think Elden Ring is a game that it's I don't know. I've always been, how do I want to say it? I've always been like from the outside looking in to the Dark Souls kind of games. I played Bloodborne and I beat Bloodborne and I liked it, but like the other games I've just kind of been like, I guess like I don't get it, I guess. And I wonder if I like read up on the lore, or, you know, was kind of into the world that they're building more, maybe I would be more interested in it. And I think that starting out with that heavy lore chapter is, I don't know, maybe I should read it and give it a go and see if
I'm sure we're gonna get shit for it. I mean, it's just the nature of the game,
Yeah.
literally of doing this stuff. There's going to be things in here that people are going to be like, "Why didn't you talk about this? Why didn't you do this?" And it's like, because it's not evidence based. Like there's not enough stuff behind it in order
Yeah.
to make it happen. And I'm sure some people are not going to be happy with the lore, but I can tell you, it's all from Fextra, and it's all from actually people who have developed the game. So we went and found all of their YouTube stuff. The person who wrote the chapter, she did just an amazing job of it. It actually originally was 12,000 words. She had to get it down to 4.
Wow.
And it was chaos. And she hemmed and hawed a lot. And it's because she had to spend 30 to 50 hours just reading and listening to how people created this game and why these things are important. If you don't understand how this in-game item description fits into Melania's past, then you've missed a very crucial and important aspect of the game, which makes more sense of why you're on this journey.
Yeah.
Well, Corey, isn't this the game where we talked about it on our podcast and we didn't even say it was bad? We just, I don't know, talked about it in a neutral manner and we got a bad rating because of it.
Yeah. On a podcast rating, we got a 2 stars out of 5 because they said that we said Elden Ring and Dark Souls were bad. And the context of the discussion was one of our friends came on the show and he had been playing Elden Ring, and we were talking about how, like, I don't know, I think I made some offhanded comment of like, I'm not really into the games.
Yeah,
like I said
we
to
didn't
you, I
say
don't
it
really,
was terrible or anything. It was just
like I don't understand why these games are like people get so obsessed with these games or something, and but also, like, I want everybody to be as obsessed with Destiny as I am, and then there's, like, not nearly as many.
yeah, but I don't think you're going to
I-
rate a
yeah.
podcast poorly just because they didn't praise Destiny.
It's true. So
Yeah.
talk about a game with a lot of lore, though, man. Destiny. Shout out to My Name is Bife. Watch his videos 2 times a week. Man, game's going places right now. So we have a lot of listener questions, a lot of community questions. So we're gonna shoot some of those at you. The one true James always gets to start the show, I guess. He asks, walk us through a day in the life of being CEO of Geek Therapeutics.
Well, one, it starts off at 6 a.m. You're usually you feel rested and you're like, this is going to be the best thing ever, and you have that first cup of coffee and you're like, cool, where do I start? Because there's so many different things that are going on. Like we have a whole new learning management system that's being developed and created for people to make it easier for individuals to attain their stuff. There's new developments. The Therapeutic Game Master is going to go under a little bit of redevelopment just to adjust to every year. We adjust a little bit. So the day always starts off with what's on the list and what can I actually get to. So I'll start with, I'll give an example of like today. So today, Wednesdays are my day at the office to kind of do whatever I want, however I want to do it. However I can get to it. So the day started off with me getting to the office and opening mail for an hour, which is always fun. It's great just opening mail and sorting it and doing all sorts of stuff. And then after that, we went into getting all of our newly minted certified geek therapists and therapeutic game masters onto the next stage of their journey overall. Then we went and created an entire new system for upcoming of the new mindfulness course that we're going to be doing. And so far, this has only taken me till 9:00. So we've now done probably a full day's worth of work already in 3 hours, and it's kind of chaos at this point. The next 2 hours are meetings consistently across all the different businesses. So the first one is with an insurance, agent, and it's through Medicaid, because we take Medicaid, and we're arguing with them about why they should be offering services to this client, and we're fighting for the rights of the client. And then after that, I interview a new person for our front desk operations for another half hour. Then the hour after that, I'm in a meeting for a our new building, and coming in to do site testing for a local agency, because we're kind of known in the area again for doing comprehensive evaluations and getting things done. After that, I have to scarf down food for lunch in about 5 minutes. And then I jump into another meeting for credentialing, because with Geek Therapeutics, we are working ourselves across all of the different states and getting licensed across all the different states. And so I have to have a weekly meeting update of where we are on what we call credentialing through insurance panels across different states, and updating them on where we are licensed in obtaining addresses for providing services. And so now we've hit 12:30. That's where we've hit so far, and we've now done 2 days worth of work in about 6.5 hours. Is kind of the equivalent. And then I finally get my 30 minutes of break, and I watch an anime on Hulu, an episode, because you need some downtime, and if you don't, you're going to burn out really quick. After that, I had an hour of police evaluations that I had to do for new stuff, for them going into current jails to become officers in the jail, making sure that they're sound of mind and whatnot. And then by about 3:00, because I have about an hour to kind of jump around and get some more stuff, doing some payroll, doing some more managerial stuff. I had to go pick up my kid from what do you call it, a camp out here, and we had to go get fish for our fish tank, and I had to mail out stuff for our con that's coming up in Miami at the end of this month. And all that brings me to about 5:00, where then I had to make dinner. And then we kind of come up to keeping the kids entertained and here. So I think it's the easiest way to kind of say it is the day doesn't ever stop. And with what we're kind of doing here, we are on the forefront of a lot of different new ideas, and those new ideas will always get some pushback. It's just how the world works. But the one thing that I have ever learned in my life is, just because someone says you can't do it doesn't mean that that's accurately true. That the biggest barrier you can ever have to yourself is yourself. And so I've honestly never let anything kind of stop. I've always been told you can't use video games or board games in therapy. I've been told that geek culture is a fad, that it doesn't have any helpful, it's an escapism. And look what we've done with Geek Therapeutics. Look where we're at. Look what we are encouraging our people to do, where we're literally providing therapy services to about 80 different clients a month right now. And that's just going to continue to grow, where we're providing educational services to over 500 people in total. And it's going to continue to grow. And with that requires more manpower and more people to kind of come on board. So it's a lot, and a lot of coffee is yes, I really enjoy coffee.
Now, have you picked out specific flavors of coffee now that you have to drink so much of it? Is there coffee that you prefer, since you're kind of consuming it so much?
Yeah. So there is one that I have kind of come down to now. There are some really good coffees out there, but they're just god awful expensive. And so the easiest one to kind of keep going off of, honestly, is the Green Mountain Vanilla Caramel Cream. It is easy to go down, and it mixes well with any sort of milk and everything like that. But if I had my choice of it, it would be a local coffee shop over here that does this amazing New Orleans blend of coffee with condensed milk, which is just insanely delicious. I would drink
Ooh,
that
yummy.
all the time.
Mm.
If it also wasn't like $8 a
Fair.
cup.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Uh, 1 2 James has a follow up questions. What do you view as Geek Therapeutics' ultimate goal?
That's a great question. And so that goes back to our mission, which is integrating geek culture into therapy, is that we very much want to be at the forefront of educational, of showing people that these things are important and that they are uh, very, very much part of our everyday culture. Geek culture is booming right now, and it's not going anywhere. The idea of having this become a forefront of need for people is only going to continue to grow. I think that one of our biggest problems is that geek culture changes so quickly. So every 4 to 5 years, geek culture's changed. If we look at the trajectory back towards the last 20 years, every 5 years has been a big change in it. And there's always been an important change that you have to adapt to. And so that's one of the biggest things that I would say that we're looking to do is to bring this forward and adapt with the world around us, but also let people know that geek culture is not something to be scared of. It's something to embrace, and it's something to really be a part of, and it's not going anywhere. It's just going to continue to evolve into new things.
Yeah, that's something I over the last, I don't know, 5 years, I've really learned to kind of embrace that and not care about, because I mean I've for when I was growing up and even up until a while ago and even now to an extent still, but I I always hit it for some reason because like let's face it, I live in the middle of Ohio, and most most people, especially the last place that I worked, not very accepting of anyone who wasn't like a rough, tough guy who was, fixing cars and throwing a few beers back. I mean, like those people, like it was kind of like they just looked at you strange. Like I go home and play video games. I don't really do any of that, and it's like, I don't know. I've really come to terms, and having, like Stephanie and Pat and people that, we do stuff with has really you know, helped with that. So, uh,
Yeah, and can I just piggyback off that? Same way, like growing up, at least from my perspective, geek culture was, well, kind of not the cool thing. Not that I cared about being cool. I was part of the library club. I liked anime. My dream was to draw my own graphic novels, and I did. I just didn't publish them. And I loved video games, and I got made fun of. And thankfully, I didn't get like the worst kind of bullying, but I was kind of bullied on it. Um, and it's kind of sad, but you're right. Like it's definitely more widely accepted, and video games is still kind of in its infancy, in my opinion, as far as how far it can go. That's why I'm also a huge fan of indie games, because, and I just watched the Wholesome Direct. I watched Day of the Devs. So many indie games do focus specifically on some sort of mental health issue, or just topics that maybe aren't usually discussed overtly in video games, maybe in the 80s and 90s, for example.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And those narrative mythologies is what we call them, are important because it's a mirror to our culture right now. And what happens in those games happens in real life, which means that we can take those aspects, that narrative journey, that aspect of following that myth, and we can very, very much overlay across our own sense of self and utilize it in positive and negative ways. It's about bringing that insight into and being able to relate to it. But here's the kicker on all that is, by playing that game, by watching that anime, by reading that comic book, you see how people have handled it. You know what can work and what cannot work. Someone's already giving you the roadmap in some capacity. And that roadmap if you just listen to it, if you just think about it for a few minutes, can be used to make one, not just your life better, but to understand the world around you and how it interacts. So Tony Stark's Demon in a Bottle comic, well, that's an easy one to use. It talks about alcoholism and the idea of him hiding from his own trauma and everything like that. You can use that, still relevant, even though it hasn't come out. It came out like a decade ago. Still very relevant, still very important in the world, and can still be used across a number of genders, a number of ages, and a number of different demographics. And that's just one comic book that someone put together.
It's so crazy that, like, and maybe not crazy, but just you see something like that being told in a comic book, and somebody who doesn't know, won't sit down and kind of acknowledge it, like, oh, they're just, reading a cartoon essentially or whatever, right? And it's like, well, they're telling important stories in here, and I get not every comic book or every video game is out there to try to deliver the message home about some, topic, but, like, I don't know. I think I was listening to a podcast today where they were talking about how you look at something like, and not that Red Dead Redemption 2 is, like, trying to deliver some sort of message or anything, but, like, the writing in that game goes from the floor to the ceiling, in terms of when you print the script out and how much is actually in there. And, they were using it as an example of, like, well, you want your kids to read. Well, there's all, like, or, instead of when people watch TV for 2 or 3 hours a night, nobody says anything. But when you want to sit down and play a game for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, people, especially 20 years ago, like, they would be like, why are you wasting your time? And it's like, well, you're doing more reading the subtitles or interacting with the game and using your brain to solve puzzles, or, like, Tell Me Why is a game that's on everybody's mind right now because it's Pride Month and everybody, Microsoft is giving it away for free, right? But that's telling a compelling story about somebody who's really going through something. And it's like, that story and playing through that story is probably 10 to 100 times more meaningful for maybe somebody who's going through the same thing than just watching it on TV or watching a YouTube video about it, or, and I think it's really important to tell those stories in games, because even if you aren't going through something like that, it puts you in the shoes of somebody who is, and you learn to build those bonds because you're interacting with these people or as these people, or, and it's, I don't know. I really like that about games, is that it actually puts you in those positions. So, all right, we have a lot more questions to go here. So David Lasby, our editor-in-chief for BossRush.net, he asks, why does our culture undervalue this? I guess this is a good segue. Why does our culture undervalue video games as an art medium and fail to see storytelling in the power of games?
Our culture is in a, just going to say it for the lack of better words, it's in a shit show right now. Our culture doesn't even know what it is. And that we're not just speaking to geek culture here. We're speaking to the world culture right now. Like, we have our ideals, we have our different aspects here that we can use, but the world's undergoing a transformation right now. Like, there are people who are still clinging to power in some capacity that our generation does not agree with. We're taking it for the moment because the alternative is even worse. However, that type of culture shift and that change takes time. Culture doesn't change overnight. It usually takes 1 or 2 generations to do it. And some would say that we are the first generation to create this, which means it's not our kids that are sleeping right now that are going to be the next step. It's going to be their kids that are going to see the fruits and the benefits of what we're doing right now. So we may never see it in our age. However, we know that we're instilling it to the next people. So there's a lot of our culture who sees video games as a scapegoat, as a avoidance tactic of the real world. Um, I disagree with them. I think that video games themselves can be are art in a not just like the idea of a painting or an image or something like that, but an art form as in a storytelling. I mean, we just lost one of our best storytellers this week in the world. And I think that um, one of our things that we need more of are better storytellers and people who are going to be able to understand themselves through the medium that they tell these stories. Like, I'm sure everyone's kind of noticed that the movie industry, if you look at it from a kind of like every decade, think about it in decades. If you look at it from what it was in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, there was new things coming out, new stories, and everything like that. And then it like stalemated. It like stopped. Like we don't have really any sort of new things that are kind of coming out. They're all based off of stories that we've read. They've all based off of books that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've lost our inspiration, our appreciation for what can be new. And I think that that's where our culture undervalues video games as a storytelling medium, as an artistic bend on different tales, but also it really is our new mythology. It just is. Like, if anyone thinks otherwise, I'm sorry. Like, the storytelling that you get in video games is part of none that you get in a lot of our other cultural mediums that we just aren't getting anymore. The video games are the new things because that's where all of our creation and stuff are going into. It's not just the graphics. It's not just the visualization. It's the metaphorical. It's the mythology behind it. It's the writing. That's what makes games, in my opinion, an art medium. And that storytelling is just one aspect of it. I'm sure that you guys saw the meme that someone posted on it. There was Skyrim, right? We're all familiar with Skyrim. Someone continuously, until the news people caught on, would send video or pictures, stills of Skyrim with the sun coming over, and it looks pristine and super like realistic, like it's made in Montana or something like that. And they're living on a countryside, and they're like, "This is my day today." And the news media would post to be like, "Look at this sunny day in Montana over here," and it's frickin' Skyrim. And able to get it done about 14 different times before they finally caught on and be like, "This is a video game." That in itself was, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways to be like, yeah, this is an artistic medium.
Yeah, it's video games. Man, video games. So many video games do really interesting things, like in terms of art, and so many different ways to kind of convey that art. So many different art styles, so many different ways to tell stories. So many different characters to. Man, it makes me it upsets me when people don't understand video games. Sometimes it's just like,
There's one
just look
that stands out. I didn't get to play it, but Pat, I think Stoy played it. What's the name of the game where you don't play it, like it's not a visual game, like you have to go by what you hear?
I think it was Perception or something, where you play as a blind person. It's a
Yes.
horror game, and there's something else. Like, you can hear by hearing, you almost have like an echolocation, but if you make too much noise, then this creature can end up finding you and killing you. But
I don't know if it was a horror game. I'm gonna have to find out. I think it. All right, keep talking. But it was just a game that I found very intriguing as like a way to tell a story.
Yeah,
there was another one where it was designed for a blind person, where the entire game is played based on noise cues. Like there's nothing on the screen.
The Veil.
It's purely
The Veil.
Mm.
All right, sorry.
Is that the one? The noise cues,
Yeah.
and
All right,
it's
sorry.
nothing on the screen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Safi from our friends over at Lore Together. They write in and say, "What what's a success story on how this training helped clinician?
Clinician?
Yeah, that. Yes.
Well, we have a lot of clinicians in our Discord that would be very easily able to say how this has helped them, because they are the success stories. We are just the medium to them. So the best that they do are very much. I would probably say, gosh, they probably at least have a dozen each that they could think of. So I'll start with a couple of them that I'm aware of, because they come to these PAXs and they help out with us a lot at these cons as well. So one person took our training, and she became a certified geek therapist, and her practice was slow and everything like that. And she took our stuff and then advertised once in her area in Colorado, and was instantly full, because no one is doing this type of stuff in her area. And so she is now a very busy lady, and sometimes is able to take the time out to come and hang out with us at cons and work the booth. And she's just absolutely a phenomenal person. I have another person from Colorado who's a licensed school psychologist, who has been able to incorporate D&D as a therapeutic game master into her school to massive success as well, where she has a waiting list for kids to come on in there, because the kids don't want to leave, because they've had such a good time, they've learned so much, to the point where this last semester she actually made it so she taught the kids how to DM, and she was able to then have them run 3 or 4 groups amongst themselves, while she was just kind of watching it and making sure it didn't get out of hand. Massive success story right there. We have people tell us all the time that they feel like they've saved their client's life, that they have been able to prosper in their businesses, their private practices a lot easier. They feel like they've been able to manage themselves, emotional turmoil a lot more, bring in a lot more different cultures than they were aware of. Some people come in very heavy in anime and no experience in D&D, and they learn, and then they incorporate it. And then they said, why wasn't I doing this sooner? This is crazy. Like, it's all interconnected in some ways. Like, D&D, you can narratively drive a storyline into creating it into any sort of movie or anything else. I mean, we just figured out, we've been playing D&D, our campaign, for 2 years now. And from this last con that we were at, I had one of the friends stay at my house, and we watched some One Piece, and we're like, well, shit, we're just playing a One Piece D&D campaign, and it's just chaotic, just like the show is. And that's just kind of how it kind of happened. And so it's kind of like a really good way to think about it, is that people find something, or they enhance themselves in a different way. They level up in a different capacity to be able to utilize this different type of thinking style and this incorporation of these different mythologies to understand them and help their clients.
Our next question comes from MH Norris. What value do you see this training having with the therapy and counseling as it becomes more well known?
So I think that more and more people are coming on into the training, and I think that this is going to only grow in value for people, because this is the future. Like, when we think about therapy, and when I'm thinking about what I was trained in what we call a Jungian component. So I'm very what we call spiritually oriented, mythology oriented, and identify in a way to not just look what's in front of you, but look at what the world's trying to tell you. in some sort of capacity. Look past what's in front of you and try to think of it from an archetypal type of lens. And so one of the things that I think is going to happen with this is that this is going to take over, because this is very much an evidence based. It can be incorporated into almost any therapy that's out there already. And also the counseling aspect, I can't tell you how quickly I have had so many kiddos been able to just build rapport and feel safe in a therapy session where they haven't felt safe before, because they don't feel like they're going to be ostracized, or they feel like they're going to be told you have to stop playing video games because you're addicted to them. It's about having those powerful conversations about why they matter to the client in front of us, or the child, and what they're getting out of it. Again, just like they have to see through it, you have to see through the game as a clinician. And I really feel like our training has the ability to do that, but also will continue to incorporate those ideas and those practices.
Our she has another question that says, what sets this apart from traditional therapy?
So traditional therapy, what a lot of people are trained in, it's called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the new, what we call, evidence-based thing that's been going on, and it's actually in its fourth generation right now. It's in its own thing. So what we see in that capacity is the idea of cognitive distortions, is that your thinking is incorrect, or we have to think about something a little bit differently. But it doesn't really create a good basis on how to jump into that, of why those cognitive distortions are there. Sure, we can accept that they're there. Yes, I understand that my sense of self is not accurate when I say that I am depressed because of my mother. I understand that that's a cognitive distortion, but how do I get out of it? How do I stop that? How do I change that thinking? It's not just as easy as being like, well, you just can't think that way. It's more along the lines of, what do I need to get to that next point? So what sets this apart from traditional therapy is that we're not going to just work on that cognitive distortion. We're going to identify it. We're going to recognize it. We're going to accept it. And now we're going to work on the evidence for why that is not necessarily true, or what do we have to do in order to bring that out. And we're then going to incorporate some sort of geek culture into it. So Legend of Zelda is my easiest one and best one to use, because I'm very intimate with the lore and everything like that. And the easiest way to do it is, sometimes, Link doesn't level up as he does other games kind of do, and you get to put points and talent points and stuff like that. It's like, that's one of my favorite things about the game, is you get new tools, and those tools can be used in a variety of different ways. Tears of the Kingdom, best scenario, or best example, we could say, about how this is incorporating that idea of utilizing something outside of our normal sense of ideas, because of that fusibility. Literally, the world is your play toy. Like, there is nothing you can do in that game. We have seen the creations, we have seen the chaos, and we have continued to see all of the new things that are going to happen. And that's only limited by your imagination. And from there, you can go in a lot of different ways of, what have you built? What are you doing? How have you handled different things? What are we doing in different ways? How are you managing yourself without these tools? What tools are you needing to move yourself forward? What do you feel like you're missing? Have you gotten the fairies yet, Corey? And being able to level up your gear, or stuff like that. What are you needing to make that game, or yourself, kind of push yourself to those boundaries of growth, and not feeling like you kind of like stagnate in a different way? That's what sets us apart, is that we have a narrative, we have an ability, and we have examples to draw from. Not just thinking about, why am I thinking this way? It's, how do we change ourselves through the narrative, through the mythology that we're playing, and how do we incorporate those lessons into our own lives to really battle those, not just cognitive distortions, but our own personal view of ourselves.
I really want to champion this, because again, sorry, from a pharmacist standpoint, I see a ton of situations, and I know it might be a resource issue or something, where a lot of providers and maybe families want to jump to pharmacological therapy immediately when that's, it's an adjunct when necessary for any sort of mental health or psychiatric condition. I myself, when going through some things, my dorky self was looking up through guidelines and stuff. I think I'd be a great candidate for cognitive behavioral therapy. And they're like, no, let me just put you on some fluvoxamine and just go chat with a therapist once a month and you'll be fine. I'm like, I'm asking to undergo, that type of therapy, and there might be some access issues. So it's great to hear you talk about that, and I'm hoping, Geek Therapeutics and kind of, I don't know, bridge that gap. I don't know. I have a thing against just over medicating people only when necessary.
Yeah, we see it at honestly, and the research shows very heavily that medication on its own can work.
Mm.
It's just the same thing but it's not as good as therapy and medication.
Yep.
That is the best combination, but it's also with the caveat that medication's also not as much as needed. Is that therapy is slightly better than medication alone.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm in that process of looking for one right now, and just because, like, not to get too personal, but I've kind of come to the realization that I probably need some sort of, something like that, and so my wife's helping me look for someone to speak with, so that's it's really helping my wife too, so it's a good thing. I think as time goes on, more people will start to realize that, right? And because I think most of us grew up in a generation where, like, I know my parents were always like, just go outside and walk it off, or don't say anything, bottle it all up, and it's like, well, it's probably not healthy, so.
Well, I got kind of a question regarding therapy, because I've had a lot of therapy growing up, and the issue that I keep running into is that you know, like when you try to identify the distortion, I immediately get defensive. Like I will shut down very, very fast, and I've actually had therapists tell me that they can't help me. So, like, what would be your recommendation to help get around something like that?
So usually when someone becomes defensive, that's exactly what it is, a defense mechanism. And that's a safety mechanism, just so we're all on the same page here, is when we see our defenses come out, that is us trying to protect our ego, our sense of self. And that's not a bad thing, but it's also not a good thing, if that makes sense. It's there to identify what we actually need to work on. In Jungian psychology, we'd call it our shadow. It's like our shadows coming out. It's like, I'm defensive. Why am I defensive? What is making me defensive? Those are the types of questions that would kind of come up a little bit more. If you can't answer those, it's like, cool, let's see when this has come up. Let's go into our own personal mythology, our own expertise into understanding why these things have kind of come on up. And when do they come up? Because that's also what we would use the word trigger for, is what triggers our defenses to come up. And because that's just as important as understanding why they do, is when do they do. And that's when we start linking. We call it constellation. We start constellating everything then to make sense, because that's what's going to create, in my opinion, a better understanding of why those would come up. So why you'd become defensive is because of this situation, and this situation exists because of my experience in this thing, which has happened this many times that I can at least recall right at this moment. And based off of that, I don't feel safe in being able to answer that in some sort of unprotective manner, because one, you probably don't feel safe, whether you're conscious or unconscious of it, with the therapist, especially if you've been burned by them, that they can't help you.
Yeah,
No, it
Pat,
makes sense.
Pat, I understand you completely. Of if something, yeah, I get defensive about a lot of things too. So I feel your I don't know if pain's the right word, but I understand what you're saying, I guess. All right, our last question. Where did it go?
I think it's above Sappy.
Is it? Did
Yep.
you did it move? Yeah. Okay. Shannon writes in via Twitter at Elvis Ranger. I'm a new certified therapeutic game master. Any campaign suggestions for newbies? I am also working with one client right now, just to get experience. Thanks.
So she's doing what we call duet play, and that duet play is very important because that's one on one. So that this is when we would pull out a tabletop game, and we would walk an individual through a scenario or a campaign or a mythological story. Now that can last one session, it can last 10, it really lasts however long the therapist feels like it needs to last in order to get the points across. What we always suggest, and especially since she's a certified therapeutic game master, is go to your local friendly store and start playing games with other people. That's the biggest thing that you can do. One, it's going to give you experience. Two, it's going to give you ideas. And three, you're going to see how other people do it. And the best game masters I've ever seen just steal from each other. Honestly, that's all it is. That's all we're doing is we play this game. We steal from this person to do this, to do this, to do this. And by the time you've finished your entire session, you have now used different things that you've experienced across 5 different campaigns to get a point across or to get your people that way. So experience is hands down the best thing to do duet play because you're going to get a really good feel for what that person's doing. But if you really want to hone your skills, is you go out and play and you figure it out. So there's a pretty famous guy. His name is John Wick. He wrote 7th Sea. Super awesome guy. Super great to talk to. He is probably what I would esteem to be as a therapeutic game master is what we will call it. Is his ability to what we call motivational interview your way through a campaign or a 90-minute session is on par with some of the best therapists I've ever seen in my life. Because he doesn't care what you do. He just wants to see how you handle it. And his thing is not a, no, I don't want you to do that. It's a yes, and it's like, yes, you can do that. And this happens, or, and this new part of this scenario has come to life, or, and the room is now on fire because of your actions. It's something that allows you to see how that goes, how someone's going to handle a different situation. And I think that he is an individual who is just one of the best GMs I've ever seen, I think ever play anywhere. And so I think that he is the model that a lot of us try to bring together within a little bit more confines, because when we're doing therapeutically, we can't have everyone just kind of like blowing the room up in different capacities. Where there has to be sometimes some consequences in different things. So the best suggestion I always have is go to your local friendly game store. They always have game nights. They always have people playing games. Join in on something, learn a new game, learn how that narrative happens, and then incorporate that into your own game playing.
I kind of have a follow-up to that. It's kind of the opposite question, I guess. Say one of us is looking for a non-traditional way of therapy. How would we like find something like this? How would one of us get into this?
So if you were looking for someone like us, we have a therapy directory online that I've got to update because I've got to put on like another 30 people. So we have that online, which is very helpful to find people across different states. But you also would want to go to like psychologytoday.com and just type in your zip code and see what pops up and then read through their profiles. I'm going to tell you that, most of them are garbage. However, you're going to find someone's like, I treat everything. Stay away. It's someone who's a little bit more be like, yeah, no, I treat these three things, and that's really what I really want to be focusing on. That's probably someone a little bit more in that wheelhouse, but you also gotta like what they have to say. You have 3 paragraphs to be able to put up there to talk about yourself. If you get to the end, if you can't get to the end, obviously that's not the right person. If you get to the end and you're like, I'd like to see what this out, most people will offer up an intake session for you for either free or consult free for free as well to kind of talk about those things.
Do you guys have any other questions? Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we move on?
Mm-mm.
Cool. Well, this was very awesome. I'm glad that you were able to come on and talk about these things. I think what you're doing, both with your books and Geek Therapeutics and everything is it's really awesome for a generation of people who really connect with games and also need this type of help or just want to see what it's all about, and I really appreciate you talking about it and coming on. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is what we do. This is half of the fun of doing these things. We anytime if you want anyone from the cohorts or anything like that, I can get you hooked up.
I just want to say thank you. I showed the books earlier, but the Psychology of Zelda I just found because I was just looking for. I'm not really a good reader, but anything Zelda related, I will partake. And then when I stumbled upon the fact that there was a book called The Psychology of Zelda, I ordered it, and it's one of the few books that I've read cover to cover in recent times. Other than Boss Rush, I also write for another Zelda podcast, and I wrote a piece based off of the stages of grief in Majora's Mask, and then we did a follow-up podcast on it because, just taking what I knew, my very baseline knowledge of the phases of grief, and then applying it through Majora's Mask was incredibly intriguing to me. So I just wanted to share that experience. I enjoyed every single one of these essays.
Thank you. That always gives us the gumption to continue making them.
I'm gonna have to order the Zelda book because I too love Zelda and I want to read it. I want to see what it's all about. So we are kind of running low on time real quick, so we're gonna skip our topics of the week, but I do kind of want to get a sense of what everybody's playing a little bit. We'll do like a quick round of what we've been playing. Tony, you're our guest. What are you playing?
Hands down, it's Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm playing too.
Are you focusing on anything in particular, like story? Or are you in the exploration phase?
So I have completely mapped out I call it the Underdark. I have completely mapped it out, and I just fly around right now, just beating the crap out of stuff because I was like, "You killed me before, I'm coming for you."
Nice.
At this point, just take it. I'm just basically clearing that entire thing. I have not found all the shrines up top yet, or anything along those. Like I can go fight Ganon at any time. I've got everything that I need to get there. But I'm having a big old ball just going around and dicking around with my little flying machines and creating bombers and stuff like that. So I'm in the kind of like creation phase, I guess I'll call it.
Nice.
Yeah, I've also been playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, mostly because we're doing book club on it, but I am really kind of mainlining some of the stuff, but I keep getting distracted. I keep getting distracted by the shrines or, the depths, or I actually found a really cool sky island the other day where like it was just this ball kind of rolling around in the air and there's a shrine inside. And that was the first time besides the kind of like the starting sky island where I was like, oh man, this is really cool. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Mario Galaxy, except you can't run around the whole thing, but it was cool.
But you can climb around it.
You can. That you can. Pat, I'm going your way because I know you played some of that Final Fantasy 16 demo.
Oh my gosh, guys. I kid you not when I say that this was probably one of the best gaming experiences I have ever experienced in my life. This demo is an absolute must play for anyone that has a PS5. Like we were just talking about how like video games is such a great medium. I this the ability that this demo had to get you to really like feel the connection with these characters, the excitement when you saw these giant creatures just battle it out, and the spectacular cinematics and the choreography and just even like the camera angles to this game, like everything is so masterfully planned. And then you get to the very end of the demo and it like literally just rips your heart and just leaves you in complete like awe of like what the heck just happened. This demo was freaking phenomenal. Like I was already overhyped for this game. This demo did even more to my hype. Like I can't believe that they finally were able to pull off something like this.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to finally getting sucked back into Final Fantasy because it's been quite a few years since I played a Final Fantasy game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, but I have to finish at least the main stuff in Tears of the Kingdom before I start doing
Book
anything
Club,
else.
we're recording next week. I think.
Is
Yep.
it next week or is
Yeah.
it It's this. I thought it was this Sunday. Is it this Sunday?
Oh, sorry, like semantics, but yeah, this upcoming Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
I need to. Man, I just can't.
Oh.
I can't get distracted. That's the problem.
I'm gonna be on you. I'll be texting you
Mhm.
like every few hours. Be like, "What are you doing?"
I know.
Well, like I said, the demo's only 2 hours, so if you do need that break, the 2 hours goes by really fast. Then I also played the demo for Lies of P, the new Soulsborne game that has that Pinocchio twist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it plays very much like Bloodborne. Like if you like Bloodborne, you will probably like this game. But it also does a very interesting thing with its world. Like you never really experienced Pinocchio like this.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see more of what this world has. The battles are okay. You know, they for a new company, they're surprisingly good with their souls battle system, minus a slightly sluggish dodge. So you tend to block more than you dodge because it's easier to recover.
That's fair.
But, yep.
Yeah, it's day one on Game Pass too. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it also comes out 4 days before Starfield. So anybody who's looking forward to that.
Luckily, they're two different games for
Yeah,
two different audiences.
I know.
Yep. And then finally, I played Shumi Come Home. It's a game that was introduced to us at PAX East. Stephanie and I got to interview the creator of the game, the Some Humble Onion, and it was really awesome to see his new creation like come to life. It was announced at the Wholesome Games Direct when it happened this last weekend. It's like, oh, this game's out now, and so it's a nice, very cozy. You could probably beat it pretty fast if you go and try 100% everything. It's probably about 4 to 5 hours.
Nice.
But yeah, it's cozy.
I can't wait.
Nice. Stephanie, what about you?
Other than Tears of the Kingdom, I played a bunch of little things. I didn't get back to Alan Wake. It's been a very infuriating week, but I demoed some games from the Wholesome Games Direct. Bubblegum Galaxy. It's very Katamari like, where you're an intern and someone deleted the galaxy, so you have to create new planets. Venba was another game, and I really resonated with that because it's a story driven cooking puzzle game, but it's really focused on the story of a woman named Venba, who is from India and moved to Canada with her husband. And to connect with her roots, she tries to revisit her mother's traditional Indian cooking. And through that cooking, she raises her son. The whole concept of cooking and family and missing where you grew up. I'm a second generation Chinese American. So, like, I feel that connection, that pull, and I'm really looking forward to when the full game comes out. And then lastly, I started playing Nocturnal. It is a game that's published by Dear Villagers. I've been keeping an eye on a few of their games because I got to interview the director of publishing for Dear Villagers. It is like it kind of almost is like a Prince of Persia. It's like a 2D side-scrolling game. Works with the concept of fire and light versus darkness. You're a hero that returns home from military training. Everyone's dead or have been murdered, and the few soldiers that are on the island is calling you a traitor and a coward. So I'm very curious as to to find out why I'm considered a traitor and a coward, and why certain parts of the level are covered in shadows, and if you're in the shadow too long you die. You need to you know encompass your sword in flames and light up torches. A really cool aspect of the game is almost everything's interactable. So even though I'm swinging my blade of fire, like, you can set the tapestry on fire, you can set fire on some vines. It's actually like really fun because there's a lot of 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania type games. So the mystery and the interactive backgrounds is really sucking me in.
Nice. Nothing new to report on my end. I'm just trucking through Zelda, and
Disney Dreamlight Valley.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the new event started. I haven't really played a lot of it though, to be honest. I'm too focused on Zelda and the Season of the Deep for Destiny. I'm also kind of really trying to get through. Although I haven't really done anything. I've just been playing the story mission every week and then popping out because I'm trying to get Zelda done. So that's kind of it. But Season of the Deep for Destiny is really telling. It's really starting to set things up for the final shape, which is coming out in February. So very very excited. They're starting to we'll say they're starting to retire some characters, and it's been it's weird because Destiny, when it was announced 10 years ago, like last week, which is crazy to think about. Especially like thinking about where I am now in my life versus when that game was announced and how excited everybody was for it in 2013. And man, seeing how that game has evolved over the last 10 years is really incredible. It's almost unrecognizable, actually. So, but it's pretty cool. I'm really excited for the final shape, and I'm really going to be sad when we have to say goodbye to some of these characters. One of them probably for good, for reasons other than Bungie saying it's time for him to go, right? Because Lance Reddick passed away, and he plays a pretty major character and a pretty major role in the game. But we'll see what happens. But that's kind of it for me.
You get Cade back though.
Yeah, it's there's
Nathan Fillion, come on.
I know there's some lore stuff that's being explored right now on how he's able to come back. So we'll see. It's kind of interesting, but at the same time, it feels like hey, we really want people to be excited for the final shape. So I don't know. I was upset when they spoilers, I guess, for Forsaken, which is an expansion you can't even play right now, but because they vaulted it.
Wait, spoilers for Forsaken?
For Destiny 2 Forsaken.
Not for
Forspoken. Okay,
no. But the whole expansion revolves around the murder of Cade 6 and you going after his murderer. And now he's just back in the latest trailer for the last expansion for Destiny 2, and everybody's like, How's that possible? So, but there's a exo memory bank on Europa, and we think like a version of Cade 6 is stored in there. So, but we'll see. I don't want to get too nerdy into Destiny lore. It's getting late. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this episode of the Boss Rush podcast. Dr. Anthony Bean, thank you so much for joining us. Will you tell people where they can find you, where they can find more information on you, and where they can purchase your books?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find us on any social media, Geek Therapeutics. Come and say hi on everything. Where our biggest followings on Facebook and Instagram. We will respond to any comments or anything like that. So play nice in all the best ways possible. And you can find our books on our store online or pretty much on any Amazon or any major bookseller too.
That's awesome. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your time. Stephanie, Pat, I also appreciate your time tonight as well. I want to thank everybody for watching and or listening. You can find all of our content on bossrush.net. You can find the video versions of all of our podcasts on youtube.com/bossrush network. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/bossrushmedia. And until next time, we love you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
The Boss Rush Podcast is a product of Boss Rush Media, LLC, and is recorded from our headquarters in Akron, Ohio. This show is produced, written, and directed by me, Corey Dirrig. My co-hosts are Stephanie Klimov, LaRon Dawkins, and Edward Varnell. You can find Stephanie at Klimov_author on Twitter and Instagram, as well as on the EXPcast. You can find LaRon at Exodus803 on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube, and also on Crossroads, the video game podcast. You can find Edward at ThatRetroCode on Twitter and Instagram, as well as hosting Nintendo Power Block. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at IamCoreyInHD, and find me hosting Tower Casuals, the Destiny podcast, and co-hosting Nintendo Power Block. Find the Boss Rush Podcast on all social media platforms at Boss Rush Podcast. You can also follow Boss Rush Media and Boss Rush Network on all major social media platforms. Join the Boss Rush Network Discord and Facebook groups to interact with other friends and fans. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.